treaties comes from my grandpa. You know, my Lala Pai Lodok from Cheyenne River, who was also a treaty man. He came from that time when they were doing old deals. And I'm just kind of briefing people that haven't heard this, but there's a lot of people here that know who I am. But he came from the old deal, the era before reservations, before IRA Council. And actually, I have a lot of his documents where he was actually going against the 1934 Indian Reorganization Act. And I think I even passed information out here one time a while ago. But we grew up with treaties and knowing that all the things that have happened to our people fell under that genocide law. And I grew up learning what genocide was by the time I was 14. Just pushing treaties on our family, pushing treaties on our people. Everybody that came to his house, his place, it was nothing but treaties. And you'd go visit him and there'd be people coming from all the reservations at his house. And hours of listening to talk about where our rights stood, which he was real well educated, not through the books, not through the white man's education, but through his own by studying, which he told us to educate ourselves, told us to learn about the treaties, you know, interpret those laws, not just federal laws, but international laws. He knew quite a bit about the international laws and explained to us where our case needed to be. And when they did treaties, it wasn't just man-made laws that they followed. And listening to our elders talk in here, and I've actually worked with treaty groups that are no longer here, and a lot of these old treaty people that are gone now. You know, I heard a lot of them mentioned today, yesterday and today, you know, Reginald Birdhorse, Joe Walker, Simon Broken Legs. You know, I worked with all those elders. I actually have a lot of Simon's paperwork that he gave me before he passed away, probably a couple weeks before he passed away. And he actually asked me to start passing information out with what he had. But I used to attend meetings with Tony Blackfeather and Clifford. You know, Tony would ask me to come and sit with him. And I'd meet him at different reservations, Cheyenne River, Lower Brule, Rapid City, Pine Ridge. I was going around with these men back in the late 90s. So I've learned quite a bit, not only through my grandpa, but through Tony and listening to all these different treaty people and doing research for them. And then one of the things, you know, that I was taught was get your education, like I hear everybody explaining to the people here, because that is our tool, what my grandpa used to tell us. That's our tool to fight these governments. You know, we're all going to be on their level. You know, we're not the uneducated people that they made us out to be, you know. And I realize now, because he pushed me to go into college. I didn't want to leave the reservations, but he pushed me off there. And I attended college at Black Hills State University for about 4 years. 16 credit hours from a bachelor's. Don't quite have it. I had problems when I was in school, but I came close. And now with what I learned there, that's what I'm using to help here. A lot of research background, a lot of computer work, a lot of documentation and writings and letters that I can do for the people here. You know, actually, Tony used to ask me to find things for him. I could get verbatim what they were talking about at United Nations. I learned how to access that web page, so when they were presenting over there, I could get on there the next day and print out that information, and when you come back, it's like, this is what you were saying over there. And he was surprised at how I did that, and I was like, you've got to learn how to research and get on those web pages. So anybody that went over there, I could pull that off and see what they were saying, because they keep track. There's a record. They, just like in courts, they give out transcripts of what's being stated over there. So I can pull records off and see who was over there. I get on there to see who's been speaking and what they've said over there. I'd bring it back and I'd give it to Tony. Or records that he needed for treaties, I'd find them and print them out and I gave them to him, which his secretary at that time was Ken Lebsock was supposed to do. He didn't do, so I was helping him just before he passed away. He'd call me up and he'd ask me to find something for him and I would do it. So with that, I just continued going to meetings and listening to the ones that were talking about traditional government, because that's what I grew up with. We grew up with the IRA councils or the treaty people that are just working with federal government. Because what I learned from my grandpa and from a lot of these elders that I worked with, you know, we exhausted remedies here. You exhausted remedies on this domestic level. You know, there is no more avenues. We're just fighting, you know, against a brick wall. You can keep going to Washington, you can keep going into their courts, we're not gonna win. It's done. I mean, there's a history, 30, 40, 50, almost 100 years since it started. You know, and as long as I've known Tony, his whole goal was to get into world court. That's what my grandpa used to say. Our case is at world, needs to be at world court now. We exhausted remedies. I heard him saying that since I was a little girl. And so now, with working with this group, that's what we looked at. Did the research for them, and what I have here, I actually given copies to some of them, but you know, we're kind of Oshika here too. We're not a treaty council that has money. What happens when they have meetings, everybody here, you know, pitches in, and I see people like Harvard and Clifford, everybody digging in their pockets to help make things happen. You know, trying to help pay for rooms or gas or food just to feed us. You know, so it gets hard. So what I could do was I made so many copies because it costs money to do everything. But this here document that I'm holding is actually the whole, it comes from United Nations website, from their International Court of Justice, their world court. These are the procedures of how to get in there. These are the rules of the court, what kind of cases they will hear, the member states and nations that are a party to that, and where it's located, the whole history of it, how it started. There's even a picture of World Court in here, over in the Hague, Netherlands. So I compiled a packet for them. So since we've been discussing that for years, and you hear our people, I mean, it's, because I feel the same way. We've been discussing that. We need to get to World Court. And our people are suffering. We have a hard time. Not just on the reservations, but out in the cities, out in the hills, out in these, you know, surrounding communities. And our people are living on the streets up there. You know, we have homeless people. We have people barely surviving out there. Not just here, but everywhere. So what I want to do is to help them as much as I can with this. Yeah.
I ask a question. What's the purpose of going to the World Court?
The World Court, from what we were told, is that the law that we're going to stand under is an international law, the genocide law, war crimes, crimes against humanity. In the eyes of that court, you know, with that pressure from them and with the member nations that are part of it, they can help resolve this. Actually, through ceremonies, through the grandfathers that did this, my grandpa included. We were already told we're going to win. He already told us we're going to win.
Okay. What is the World Court going to do?
They're actually going to make the United States uphold what they had made with us. Their treaties, this land base. They're going to look at where we started from, which was the whole Louisiana Purchase territory, not just the Black Hills area.
Okay, let's say that we go to the World Court. The World Court says, all right, all these treaties, everything, the U.S. has to conform. Is the U.S. going to conform?
I think they will. With being the lead nation, I don't know if you learned this, but there's two superpowers in this world. I learned this from my grandpa. Two superpowers in this world, which is Russia and the United States. Two major countries here. We have Russia behind us. We've always had Russia behind us. When those elders were meeting with treaties, they were meeting with their officials in Russia. They were meeting with their officials in Great Britain. We have all these countries already. Great Britain's probably one of the oldest countries before the United States.
My uncle was talking earlier, said we have to get Wakantika back.
It's true.
U.S. isn't a superpower. They're only a superpower in the world.
That's in their world.
In their world. Same with Russia. The real superpower is God, Wakantika. Yeah. That's where we have to ask help. That's what my uncle keeps saying over and over and over again. Why don't we listen to him?
You know, our elders told us that too, that the reason why those treaties stopped and the reason why we don't go forward with these treaties, and you see these treaty groups struggling, because they haven't turned to Wakantanka. They haven't became prayerful. They're not using our prayers and our way of life to help them. And that's what we have to do with this.
Well, and I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying this out of complete and total respect. Yesterday I told that story about that lawyer. You Dakotas, get off your high horse, you're just Indians, he said. And we checked the lawyers. They have to uphold the Canadian Constitution, they have to uphold the American Constitution. International court, world court, they have to uphold that Constitution. Those don't belong to us. Everything that I'm saying, it's not coming from me. My mouth is speaking right now. This is coming out of my mouth, but I'm telling you what our elders are saying. We don't need to go to the World Court. We don't need to go to the United Nations. We don't need to do any of that. The superpower is right here in front of us. Now, we were talking while we were waiting. You know, Tony Blackfeather, we had a moment of silence for some people. You know, both of my uncles have passed away now. And if I believe in our Dakota ways, my grandfather is sitting right here beside me, standing behind me, standing right here, my Kushi's here. Our relatives are still here, they're still here with us. We have to recognize the real superpower. That's what, we came 12 hours. And we had I come from Sioux Valley, you know that fellow that was talking earlier about this self-government. What does self-government mean? Self-government means if we believe we're sovereign, we don't ask permission from anybody. But it's because we're ingrained with this thing. We've got this fear inside us. If we don't get money from the government, we're going to starve. Our people are going to die. You know, if that's the way we believe, then we're not Dakotas. I don't believe like that. And when we talk about sovereignty, you know, this court case that we're in Canada, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Winnipeg, Manitoba. Winnipeg is just about 1 million people in that city. They've got all the national news, media, Canadian television, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, global radio stations. The Dakotas, we had to go there for a court injunction in their court. The media was there, and our leaders walked into that courthouse when it started at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they said, we do not recognize Canada, we do not recognize the problem, we do not recognize your court, and the Dakotas walked out. The media went wild. Now, we were talking about that with some people here. What would happen if we went to court somewhere and we told the judge, we don't recognize you, and we walked out? What would happen? We'd get arrested, thrown in jail, right? Because, yeah.
Nevada, too.
Yeah, because we don't recognize our own sovereignty.
No,
We're asking somebody to recognize us. What we're doing when we started a court case with Canada. Canada calls us refugees. So Canada came with a statement of defense. They have 30 days, right? You know the law, 30 days to make a statement of defense. They asked for a 45-day extension. Canada still didn't give it. When we think about that, Canada's been calling us, Dakotas and Canada, refugees for 145 years. If they were so sure that they could beat us in court, why did it take 4 months to come up with a statement of defense? And then when they did, they asked the judge to turn it down. This case is too old. There's no evidence. We can't produce anything, and the judge turned them down. So what Canada did was they put it in abeyance. Sioux Valley, there was 3 communities that took part in this court case. The Sioux Valley was one of them. They turned around and they sided with the government. A self-government agreement, a treaty. They accepted the Indian Act. They want to be Indian. You know, that's not self-government, that's not sovereignty. When we started how we got into the court case with the province, like the province is just like your state here. I asked them, what would have happened if you had built this casino off the reserve? Oh, you can't do that. So when we started selling tobacco from the Mohawks, we wrote letters to the municipality, to the province, and to Canada. And we said, we're going to sell tobacco. Of course, the province and Canada wrote back, they said, you can't do that. So we told them, we're not asking you for permission, we're telling you what we're going to do. And we bought property off the reserve in what they call provincial jurisdiction. And then we went to court, and the judge asked our leader, and the leader that I'm talking about, his leadership has been handed down from his dad, and his dad before him, and his dad before him. He's the last Dakota leader from Ahana. All the other Dakota communities, they either have a chairman or a chief elected. His doesn't come from anybody other than his people. The judge asked him, how are you going to defend yourself? Aboriginal or sovereign? And our leader said sovereign. And the judge turned to the Crown attorneys and he said, this is going to take a long time. As judges, we've discussed this in the chambers. And then what happened after we fired all our lawyers? We got all the evidence. I don't know if anybody's been in court before. The lawyers don't give you any information. They just tell you. Well, we got stacks of paper that thick from the province. And so we went through it. And then they already had the case on already. Had our leader gone into court and said, I'm fighting this under Aboriginal law, like the way the lawyers wanted us to, that case would have been done just like that. We would have been sitting in jail. But because we're standing sovereign, we have no lawyer. People always ask, who's your lawyer? We don't have a lawyer. We talk about the case again. Well, who's your lawyer? I said, we don't have a lawyer. And then they vote, and then the real question comes out. Who's thinking for you? Who's thinking for us? That's what they ask. Like as if we don't know anything. And my uncle talking about Wakantika, and I noticed people, not that they were getting emotional when some people were talking. And I was getting like that myself too, because all the things that have happened to our people, the atrocities that happened to our people, the Washichus did that to us. My mom, my dad, they went through residential school, and I don't know what happened to them in there, but the grace of God, my mom is still alive, she still loves me. And my Dakojas are small, and I see them, and I don't want them growing up like that. And this is why I say the things that I do. I'm just telling you things that my elders have taught me. I'm like a sponge. You can tell I'm big. But that it's no I'm not being disrespectful. I'm trying to say this in a positive way, that we don't need to be recognized by anybody else but by God. And that's why I'm asking those questions. And I have no more questions.
Thank you. Plamela Stacy. Tokaya Tinkashla Wupla Waku. Hutchinson, Lakota Hemie. Matoya Hemie, Chunkbe Opio Matua. This Tila Lakota Mia Swear Ashchin, Lakota Hemie. relatives first. Just want to thank the Creator and say thank you. And I too, Stacy, you know, Sister Stacy, that's how I'm supposed to do that. I did some studying on my own too, and I was wondering if our relatives knew about the 1783 Paris Treaty. If you do, please raise your hand.
1763.
1783 treaty. It's called the Paris Treaty.
Back here.
Okay, one person out of all of us sitting here, beside myself, all heard about the Paris Treaty. The other one is, how many of you know that the Oglala Sioux tribe is carrying this is the BIA, carrying a 344U and a 344N number. These documents come from the BIA. Like this man said, Wakantanka, he's our leader. These papers, if I were to throw them away, it's still our land. It still belongs to us. I'm not saying he's wrong. I told him he put on a good argument and he made me mad. But the reality of the story is that they're using that Paris Treaty to supersede what we are saying. And we have to fight back. But we don't have to fight mean sometimes, but we do have one person who's dividing us as natives. And some of us, when somebody divides us, we call them a traitor. And it's hard to say that. And we're not going to get nowhere if we don't agree. When we walk out of here, if we don't agree, we will not succeed. The only way that all of us will succeed from the time Columbus came to here, the only way we're going to succeed is when they bury us one by one, or cremate us, or call us John Does, or something like that. Or wipe it out and tell us we're animals and give us our blood degree, and then when there's no more full-blooded Indian, then they have succeeded. America is named after Americo Vespucci, who died in 1507 of syphilis. We're not Americans. That white man is not our dad. Do I look like I'm white, wearing a buckskin dress? Why am I look like buffalo.